Space exploration, advanced technologies, parallel universes, time travel, alien encounters. All of these traits are from the speculative fiction genre known as science fiction. Again, just like the last video in this series that went through fantasy subgenres, I've got to say it here, there's not a hard, fast rule for any of these. A lot of books blend in between one, two, or more of these subgenres, and this is not an exclusive or conclusive list. These are just some of the main subgenres or categories of the science fiction genre. The first subgenre that we're going to explore is called hard sci-fi. Well, what this simply means is that it is concept heavy. We're going to be talking numbers. We're going to be talking figures. We're trying to connect it to the real world as much as possible. A word for this is scientific realism. The fake, advanced, fictitious science that we're using is going to be tied as closely as possible to real world realities. In these stories, the author is generally concerned with accuracy and with logic. Stories that might fall into this category that you might not know are even sci-fi is Jurassic Park, 2001: A Space Odyssey, or even The Martian. The opposite of hard is, of course, soft, and that's our next subgenre. And it really is the opposite of hard. Whereas authors try to focus on accuracy and realism in hard sci-fi, in soft sci-fi, the science is really just used as a tool to tell the story and to develop the characters. Instead of dealing with the technical details of the science, we're dealing with the psychology of the characters or the movement of the plot. And science is really just a tool to tell those things. Here you've got some literary classics like 1984 or Frankenstein or even Flowers for Algernon. Next up is military sci-fi, somewhat self-explanatory, but this is science fiction technology, often that is utilized in weapons set in a militaristic society or setting. This can be set on Earth, or it can be set in space, or even on a different planet. Think maybe even Halo when it comes to these things. You're going to have maybe commanders and lieutenants. You're going to have regiments and armies. It's set military. It can be somewhat small scope of like you're following a platoon, or it can be some kind of like space battle where you're following one side that is at war with another. Here you might think of books like Ender's Game, or one that I haven't read yet but have heard really, really good things about, Old Man's War. And then we have space opera, which might cause you to think of a big woman singing very loud out in space. And although that would be an incredible sci-fi subgenre, that's not what this is. Instead, think about scoping out from military subgenre even more and seeing space warfare or interplanetary battles, futuristic weapons. You might even think of Star Wars here with so many different cultures and planets that are going on. And it's not always war, but where space opera is opera, by the way, not about singing, but more about like soap operas. So it's telling this expansive story with these interweaving characters and threads and plots that are going all throughout the far reaches of the universe. Stories that fall in this category are Dune, or even The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy if you want a more silly take on this kind of space opera. You might even get Leviathan Wakes, and The Expanse series is a big one that falls into the space opera subgenre. And then the subgenre that maybe carries over from fantasy is that of steampunk. That can also be exclusively a sci-fi subgenre as well. These are often set in a Victorian era or even maybe a Western setting. There's some technological advances that are anachronistic, that are outside of their time. So again, you have maybe airships or steam cannons and the like. But here, it's going to be based on science, it's going to be rooted in science, and the fantastical elements are not going to be rooted in fantasy, but are going to be rooted in some kind of harder science. Here, you might have books like Homunculus or The Difference Engine as options. Next up, we have Cyberpunk. That is a subgenre of science fiction, and the greatest description that I've heard of it is low life mixed with high tech. This was a genre that kind of blossomed in the 60s and 70s that was a sci-fi look at society impacted by drugs and the rapidly advancing technology in the world around us, and even the sexual revolution during that time. And so you're going to get a lot of like online, cyberspace, virtual reality conversations, settings, plots in this subgenre. Have you seen Tron? Think Tron. But if you want to think books, think of Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, which is an incredible title, and also Neuromancer. A few more, we've got time travel. Hey, if any of these subgenres have been self-explanatory so far, this one probably more so than most. It contains some elements of traveling from one time to another. Typically that's in the past, but of course that can be in the future as well. And sometimes this is between parallel universes as well. To be honest, and maybe this is just for a different video for a different time travel never really makes sense to me because there's always some kind of like situation that it really wouldn't work because it would cause a loop or a break in the system, or really that butterfly effect. If you kick one stone in the wrong place at the wrong time and that causes someone to trip, and then that causes like there's so many things that could go wrong with time travel. It just wouldn't ever work in my humble opinion. However, make for good science fiction stories. If you want a good time travel story, go to the original, The Time Machine. I believe that it coined that phrase time machine and maybe even time travel back in 1985 when this book came out. Or you can go with something more modern, The Chronicles of St. Mary, beginning with one damned thing after another. I said the last one was self-explanatory, but this subgenre is called Alien Invasion. What do you think that is? Yeah, you're probably right. It's when a typically technologically superior, advanced extraterrestrial people show up on Earth and invade. Sometimes they come in peace, but not too often. Often they come in war, or they want to replace or just completely destroy and wipe out humanity as we know it. Stories that fall into these categories are Childhood's End or even War of the Worlds. And then our catch-all here is the blended category, and that is for science fantasy, when you've got the two genres that combine in a story, and for a book or series, you've got scientific romance, which, cool but weird. Space westerns are also a thing. Imagine that. So this is really just a catch-all when two different genres collide. I know that I probably missed some subgenres that you're particularly partial to. If I did, please let me know what they are below. And if you know of any key stories that fall in any of these subgenres that I talked about in the science fiction genre, then please let me know those in the comments down below as well. And as always, thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video and click like. If you haven't yet, click subscribe, join the Dragon Army so that you can see when the next video comes up in this series. There's only one more left, and it is going to be, I believe, 10 tips of getting into the science fiction fantasy genre. We'll see you in the next video.